Hi, I'm Philip Rosinski, and there's an important question that I need to ask you. Darts fans, are you ready for the weekly Dartscast?
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast in association with Darts Corner. I'm Alex Moss and alongside me as always it is the Darts statistician Burton, DeWitt. How are you doing?
Considering Mark Walsh has had his best weekend on the senior tour, I don't think there's a way I could possibly be doing better as a human being right now. How about you, Alex?
Great to hear. Yeah, that was a nice surprise, wasn't it, following those results on Dart Connect. Mark Walsh getting to a semi-final and a quarter-final. Hopefully we're going to see him back on TV very soon. But yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. We are recording this week's show on a Monday evening here in the UK, so it is a little bit too early for my week to have been spoilt by the football. But lots to get to. You're going to hear from two players who both had successful weekends. Martin Schindler, the newest PDC title winner, winning his first title on the Euro Tour. Plus, we're going to be joined by Alex Spellman, a winner of the Cross Border Challenge in the CDC, to talk about that and his 9-dart finish as well at the weekend. But before we hear from our guests, let's talk about them first, and starting with Martin Schindler. What a weekend for the Wall, beating Gerwyn Price 8-5 in Sunday night's final in Riesa to win the International Darts Open. His first title in the PDC ranks. He's only the third German after Max Hopp and Ricardo Pietreczko on that roll of honour. But let's get into our question of the week, sponsored by Condor Darts, and it is about Martin Schindler. He's won his first title. He is the new German number one. We asked our listeners, and we're going to discuss it as well, where is Martin Schindler going to be ranked at the end of this season?
It's a tough question to answer because I'm still not sure just how good he can become. You know, he's a player that we've now seen for nearly a decade. If you went to Euro Tours, you saw him a decade ago, but we started to see him 2015, 2016 qualify as a host nation qualifier on occasion. Won his tour card a couple years later, fell off the tour for a year, but for the most part, it's been a mainstay, and for the most part has improved year on, year off. Or year over year, I guess that's what the saying is. I should know my sayings by now. I've only been saying them for a few decades. Year over year, there we go. But especially since losing his tour card 5 years ago and winning it back and getting back on the tour, he's only gone from strength to strength. And every year he's better than the previous year. And he was in that list of players that we thought would break through sooner rather than later to win a title. When we looked at the best players not to win a title yet, obviously at the start of the year, the obvious answer, which ended up being the correct answer, was Luke Littler was going to break his duck at some point because, well, he only made the world final in his second professional tournament. So we knew Luke Littler would, but Martin Schindler was on that list as well. And he was very, very high up it. And the big thing that had been keeping Martin Schindler from winning up until now was consistency. There would be brilliant matches, but there would also be some really poor ones mixed in. And so far this year in Players' Championship events, that has been true as well. You look in 16 Players' Championship events this year, he's averaged under 90 in 6 of them. That's nearly half. That's too shy of half. But he's also averaged over a ton in 4 of them. His overall average is 93 and a change, and it's not a bell curve. It's just a flat line of really bad, really average, and really good performances, as many of one as there are of the others. It's that level of inconsistency, and it's not just from weekend to weekend. It's from match to match. You go back to his most recent Players' Championship event, it was 106, 105, 82. Earlier in the year, he went from a 98 in the last 64 to an 80. Granted, he won that match in his very next match. It's been hit or miss and an equal amount of both of those. But over the last 2 Euro Tours, where he made a semifinal in Munich just a couple weeks ago and now winning the title in Riesa, it's not been hit or miss. It's been hit. It's been very good every single match, excluding his first match in Munich where he averaged 92, which again is not poor, but it is below his Players' Championship seasonal average by a couple points. Every match since then has been good or great. 99 again in beating Damon Hedda, 98 in beating Chris Dobie, over a ton in beating Nathan Aspinall, 96.5 in going out in the semifinals to Michael Van Gerwen. And then this past weekend in Riesa, it was 97. Granted, he could have averaged 77 and still won that match because his opponent didn't show up. But then the 105 against Joe Cullen, 97 against Richard Veenstra, 95 in a match where, yes, he was fortunate, but you need a little bit of luck in beating Danny Noppert, 98.5 in beating Chris Dobie for the second Euro Tour running, and then in the final, that 96 against Gerwyn Price. That's the level of consistency that wins titles. That's the level of consistency that drives you up the rankings. That's the level of consistency that Martin Schindler had never shown before those last two Euro Tours. And if he's now being able to play, maybe not at that 106 average, that he will sometimes still win, but at a 98, 99, every single match, he's going to be tough to beat, and he's going to keep going up the rankings. He's now into the world match play. That was in doubt before this. He was, right there in the race, but he had work to do. He no longer has work to do. He's there. He's going to be in the World Grand Prix, also for the third year running. He's obviously going to be in the European Championships. A very good chance that this gets him into the Grand Slam of darts as well. And the World Championships wasn't in doubt, but it clinches that as well and improves what his seeding will be. He's in everything except for Minehead as a result of this run, and he'll have confidence that he'll get there as well. Top 16 is not out of the question, but it is still tough to answer because we just don't know how good he is yet because he's still improving. He might be 27. He might have been around for a decade, but he's still getting better. He's still finding gears that we didn't know he had. He is a fighter. He is a tough player that we know you're going to get a 110% effort from every single time. And maybe it's because he's one of those players who needs to play at his highest effort level to get the most out of him. But what that most is, he's still learning. We're still learning. And it makes it tough to answer because could he win a major? Could he become a top 10 player? Yeah, he's not there yet. But if he keeps improving the way he is, there's no reason to say he won't be.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. I don't think we've reached the ceiling of what Martin Schindler can achieve in this game. And just looking at that gap to the top 16 at the moment, Ross Smith in 16th spot, around £80,000. And this Euro Tour title that Martin Schindler's won, 30 grand, is currently the highest single figure of prize money on his ranking, which I think shows you the areas that he is going to need to improve on if he is going to make those bigger jumps, get to the top 16, the top 10 and beyond. It is going to be making those deeper runs on TV more consistently where the big money is. And in fairness, 2023, that was a year where we saw Martin Schindler make some strides on TV at the quarterfinals at the UK Open and the World Grand Prix, and take away the World Cup, which doesn't count towards the ranking, where he's made plenty of quarterfinals before. At a semi-final last year, arguably could have made the final last year as well, but he's making those steps, and it's not been a meteoric rise like we've seen with other players where they've gone and won a major or they've got to a final on TV. It has been that gradual progress for Martin Schindler, but it is progress, and those two quarterfinals bookended by the last two World Championships. Either end of that, you've got 2023 and 2024, where he's had some heartbreaking defeats on the biggest of stages. 2 years ago against Michael Smith, 3-1 up in sets, loses 4-3, and then this past year, okay, not as high profile, maybe more high profile for Scott Williams' comments afterwards, but 2-0 up in that one, loses out 4-3. And the thing that most impresses me with Martin Schindler, yeah, we've seen the levels that he can produce on the stage now for a little while, but when I think to this question of can he get to the top 16, can he go further, I think what's going to help him get there is that ability to bounce back and that determination coming back from defeats and some tough moments in his career. You mentioned about when he lost his tour card at Q School, and what has he done since he's come back has been incredible. And he come back the same year that Raymond van Barneveld did, and a lot of eyes were on Barney in that Q School, but it was Martin Schindler that took a lot of the headlines with the levels that he produced that week and what he's gone on to achieve, getting the top 32 in less than 2 years with that tour card. And the Euro Tour, just the one just before the one we've just had, the one in Munich a few weeks ago, where again he was performing like he was at the weekend. He was throwing the high 90 averages. He was beating some top players, Chris Dobie, Nathan Aspinall, Damon Hedda, loses 7-2 to Michael Van Gerwen in the semi-finals. And we saw the reaction, took a little bit of stick for that as well, I saw on social media, but just how disappointed he was. And I think he believes now that he has got the game to go very far. And I think he has got that belief now that the ability has been there for a while, but he looks to have that confidence that he does belong on that stage. He is one of the best players and he can win these titles. And we saw him do it at the weekend in Riesa. And 43% of our listeners are going with 17 to 20 in the rankings, 21% going 21 or below. I'm going to go with that 34% of our listeners, top 16. I think this win is going to give him that confidence to break even more ground in the majors. So I'm going to say Martin Schindler. He is the newest winner on the Euro Tour. And after Ali Pali, I think he's going to be in that top 16 as well.
Now, Gerwyn Price made it the run to the final, but still his wait for his next single title on the stage continues. First time losing the final in 5 tries in Riesa. But how do you think he'll reflect on his weekend's work?
Yeah, you got to say it's a bitterly disappointing end to the weekend for Gerwyn Price, and he's not experienced that too many times in Riesa, has he? Because before the final, he might have even thought of petitioning for the World Championships to move to Riesa, because that's where he won his first Euro Tour in 2018, defended it a year later, and then he went back-to-back again the last 2 years, 2022 and 2023. So he was on course for the hat-trick and a 5th title in Riesa at the weekend when he made the final. And the levels were there. We were seeing it from the Iceman for the most part, around the 96 average mark in his games, a 101 in the final. But the one that jumps straight off the page is that 115.74 against Ricardo Pietrexco in the 3rd round on Sunday afternoon. It's the 3rd highest average in Euro Tour history, which shows you just how good it was. And I think the doubles are something that I've got to highlight as well, because that's where it kind of fell apart for Gerwyn Price here, because up until the final, 25 out of 46, he was operating at a over 50% clip on the doubles, 7 out of 10 in that semi-final with Stephen Bunting, but the doubles deserted him in the final, 5 out of 20, 25%, and some key moments in the game. An early one, he had 4 darts to go 3-1 up, but I think the one that's probably going to be looked at the most is leg 10. He had 4 darts to go level at 5-all and missed them all, and we saw Martin Schindler get that break, go 6-4 up, and he didn't look back from then on. And that for me was the key point in the final, because we'd just seen Martin Schindler take out the 120 to hold throw. Gerwyn Price was threatening to break, and if he had got it back level at 5-all, it would have derailed that momentum of Schindler for a little while. But he got another chance, he took it, and then he pushed on and won the game from there. But it's a funny one, because there was so much that was good about Gerwyn Price's game at the weekend. Some of that timing, and I think it's something that I've always associated with Gerwyn, is his knack for a big finish just at the right time. I think back to that 160 at the UK Open 2017 against Ian White. That was one of the big moments early on in Gerwyn Price's career, and we saw it at the weekend, the 161 against Ross Smith. Ross, he was on 161. He had the first go at it, but hit the treble 20, decided not to go for the finish, didn't go for the treble 17, and Gerwyn Price taking out the 161. But in the end, falls short in the final. Gerwyn, he mentioned the crowd as well on stage being against him, something that unfortunately for him he's had to deal with, or try and deal with, for a long time now. But when you're playing a German player in Germany, you can't rely on getting the best of order, can you? And the referees, they're not going to stop the game. I think that's what Mervyn King wanted when he played on Friday afternoon, for a bit more respect from the crowd. But I think for Gerwyn Price, he's not got too much time before he's got to go again with the Premier League on Thursday this week. So I think that's a good thing. I think on his day, he is easily one of the best 5 players in the world right now, but he's desperate to prove it with some silverware. And this is the closest that he's been for some time to doing that weight for that singles title on stage does go on. And I think the longer it goes on, he's going to get more frustrated, because he has played some great stuff for the last few years, but he's still on the search for that next big title.
It's really in some ways amazing that so far this year he's not had a title, because he's been playing absolutely out of his mind. And he's currently second bottom in the Premier League, but in terms of averages, he's second. Only Luke Humphries has averaged higher than he has in so far this year in the Premier League, and he's averaged over a ton in 9 out of 17 matches. That's just over half of them. Similarly, so far in the Euro Tour this year, he's played 13 matches. He's averaged over the ton in just over half of them, 7 out of 13. And if you thought that, all right, I'm done with that comparison, well, all right, he's not just over half in the Players' Championship events this year. He's significantly over half over the ton. 8 out of 13, including all 4 matches that he played last week on Tuesday, including the match he lost to Danny Noppert, averaged north of the ton. He's averaging over 100 more often than he's averaging below 100. That is world class. That is something that only, Gary Anderson and Luke Humphreys are also managing to do. But he's not getting the reward for it. And part of that is because when he drops down, he gets found out somehow, even if he drops down a little bit. You look at this past weekend, where actually probably statistically, other than that match against Ricardo Pietreczko, probably had his worst 3 matches back to back to back in the quarter, semis, and finals that he's had all year on a big stage. He was very, very fortunate to beat Ross Smith. I don't know if Ross Smith turned down the 161 or whether he didn't realize that Gezi was also on the 161, considering it was a leg that both of them literally matched each other shot for shot until that 161 attempt. But he turned it down, and that turned away the match. And credit to Gezi, he took the 161 out. But he took his chances after that. But he didn't play all that well in that match. And he didn't play all that well against Stephen Bunting. It looked like Bunting, after he fell behind early, was coming back on Price and was getting the better of him. But Price hit it the right times. And in the final, he just didn't have his finishing, just deserted him. But even when he was playing below his best, he still managed to win 2 matches against players playing better than him. So it's a bit bizarre that he hasn't won a title yet. And I think, if anything, the fact that he was able to win on his B game when so often he's been playing on his A or A+ game and not getting over the line is got to be good for his confidence. Sure, he lost the final, but he was able to get some wins that all year he wouldn't have gotten in that against Ross Smith and against Stephen Bunting. And if he can take that confidence, maybe he'll start to get results. He's playing at the 2nd or 3rd best level in the world this year, even if results-wise he's barely top 10, 7th best in Premier League, and probably a little bit lower outside of that. But it's moving in the right direction, and at some point, the performances he's putting in are going to match the results. And for his sake, hopefully that's because he's winning, not because he drops off.
And now move on to our first guest on this week's show. He is the newest winner on the European Tour. Here's our chat with Martin Schindler. I'm pleased to say we're joined by the newest title winner on the European Tour, Martin Schindler. Thanks for the time, Martin. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good at the moment. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can imagine. And we've got to start this chat with a look back at last weekend in Riesa, a memorable weekend for you, winning the International Darts Open, your first senior title in the PDC. What have the last few days been like for you since what was the biggest win of your career so far?
Well, I really have to say I needed to settle a bit to realize what was happening now at the weekend. It was a great feeling winning a tournament, especially like a European Tour event, also playing in front of the home crowd. So I was pretty overwhelmed. I remember the night when I was calling with my wife, and it was just like the thoughts were going right to left and left to right all the time. It was just like I couldn't stop crying, really. It always came over me. And now, luckily, after a couple of days now, it gets better. So I'm not crying anymore, at least. But yeah, it's been good days for me.
Well, it was your first senior PDC title, but you've obviously had a lot of success in your career so far, winning big games, winning things outside of the PDC. Have you ever experienced the feelings like you had on Sunday before, or was this all new for you as well?
No, this was all new for me. I was always believing that someday I could go that far to win a title, but like you mentioned it, I was struggling a couple of times, especially in big games, especially in certain positions of the tournaments, and it wasn't easy. I have to say it wasn't easy, but I'm very relieved that now I got this winning feeling, that I know how it feels to be a champion of not a small event, of a bigger event, but not a major yet. But I will try to keep going, especially with winning up on stage.
Definitely. Well, what a moment it was beating Gerwyn Price in Sunday night's final to win the title. And you said afterwards your knees were shaking. You were the happiest man on earth as well. So what does this victory mean to not just you, but everyone who's supported you over the years as well?
Well, I've talked to a couple of people, like my manager and my wife, obviously, but also some friends. And so many were saying, we cried with you. I mean, like I said before, I was trying it for so long, and obviously at one point you're really struggling with yourself because you don't know if you really got it, if you are able to win a tournament. So that's the point where character comes in question. And yeah, luckily I won that game against Price, which means a lot to me because Price is one of the best players, probably one of the best ever in the business, especially with all his presence and everything he does. And I'm so relieved now that I got the title. And yeah, in first place, like I said, my knees were shaky. It was like couldn't stand it. I didn't really know what to do with the presentation and everything, with the way I wanted to celebrate. So it just came over me, and yeah, like everybody was able to see, I was just something in between screaming, crying, smiling. And yeah, well, I was trying to cover my face, but was not really able to do that at one time.
Yeah, we could all see the emotion that you had, and it was lovely to see as well. But I'm sure we'll bring up last weekend again before we let you go. But let's just have a look back on the last few years, and since we last had you on the show with our producer Hannah, it was towards the end of 2021, so it was your first season with a new tour card after winning it back at Q School, and a great first year on the tour with that card. You ended up with that return to Ali Pali. So how did you look back on that first season? You obviously had that disappointment 12 months earlier losing your card, but the way that you bounced back, you must have been pleased with how it went.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've seen so many players who lost their tour cards and were not able to get it back. So I'm aware of the fact that I'm a fighter, and I said to myself, even though it may not going to happen in 2021, I'm still going to try it, even though maybe I'm not going to get a tour card. And I was also thinking back in that time that even if it's not going to happen with a tour card, then it doesn't matter anyways, because it was still with the COVID time, and so the tournaments were not really planned, and yeah, the year was not really planned out already. So I said to myself, don't worry, if you're not getting it back this year, you're going to get it back next year. But yeah, I got it back in 2021, and I came back really strong. I managed to win the Super League straight away. I managed to get some results on the floor as well. And yeah, in the next years, I've really progressed with it. Managed to get to some semifinals, to a final as well on Pro Tours. And then, yeah, now I'm having a title 3 years later since getting my tour card back. And yeah, I was always trying to be relaxed, to don't put myself too much under pressure. And yeah, it really worked out for me.
Yeah, it definitely has. And 2022, we see you continue to rise up the rankings, tick off more first for you. You mentioned about the Pro Tour runs that you had, but you also had those debuts at the World Match Play, the World Grand Prix, two of the hardest majors to qualify for. So what was it like playing in those two events, particularly playing at the Winter Gardens for the Match Play and then the Grand Prix, the double start, which is unique for the PDC?
Yeah, I still remember the times, especially playing in the World Match Play for my first time. It was so a relieving feeling as well that I was able to qualify for that one. It's like you said, the World Match Play and the World Grand Prix are the hardest tournaments to qualify for. So you really need to play 1 year of very good darts to qualify for it. And yeah, I remember the golden ceiling. I remember the feeling when I was there the first night in the venue as well. The atmosphere, the crowd, they all have been brilliant. I went with it. I mean, I haven't played that well. I played very good my first match play. I think it was against Cassie as well. I lost that one, but yeah, it was a great feeling playing in the World Match Play. It was like also a new target I achieved, and yeah, went through it with the World Grand Prix. And yeah, also managed to get a good result on the World Grand Prix a couple of years later.
Yeah, we'll come on to that in a moment, but just finishing up on 2022, and another achievement for you was getting that first win at the World Championship on that Ali Palace stage. I'm guessing it might have been mixed emotions looking back on that tournament, because you got that first win, and a round later you were in a great position against Michael Smith, who'd go on to win the world title. 3-1 up, he comes back to win. How long did it take you to get over that defeat?
Well, actually not that long, because I was thinking to myself, well, now you got your first win on the Worlds, and you're playing against a Grand Slam champion, a new born Grand Slam champion back in that time. But Michael was playing a really good game, but I think looking back on his tournament, I was the only one who can really get him to the line of defeat. I think it was 120 points that I've missed to beat him, so I was really happy with my performance. I was playing good. I was hitting a lot of 180s. I was taking out crucial finishes in certain moments, and I think it was a good game at all. So it didn't really bother me that I lost. I mean, it bothered me in one way, because I wanted to beat him, because it's the Worlds. You want to go as far as you can, but like I said before, I don't want to put myself too much under pressure, because I think you have to always progress step by step, and you cannot reach all at once.
Well, let's get on to 2023 then. You mentioned about progress step by step, 2 major quarterfinals for the first time in your career, the UK Open and the Grand Prix, and just looking at the ranking events that we've had on TV in the last few years, you've played in 17 of the last 18, so you've become a real regular in these big events. Do you feel a lot more comfortable and at home on that big stage now?
Is it really like that? I think the only one I've missed was the Grand Slam, wasn't it? Yeah. No, I mean, there's been some really good years for me. I mean, the Grand Slam is also, like a one-day tournament qualifier. So if you're not there for like 110%, you're probably not going to make it through the qualifier. So not really looking back to the Grand Slam in a bad way, but yeah, I'm feeling very good that I was able to qualify for so many majors consistently. And this is the most important thing for me, to be consistent, because in the end, consistent is the most important thing to get results, to win your games, and to go on with your game, to even get better. Because if I'm consistent with my game, at one point I'm not going to be happy anymore with my consistent, and that's where my average or my game gets better. So this is the way I'm trying to progress all the time. I'm not trying to get games like one game I play 110 average, next game I'm going to play 83, because then you don't really have a progress. So I'm trying to get it through with all the consistency I have, practicing regularly, trying to practice at the same times at a day. And right now I really have to say it's starting to make progress.
Yeah, we can definitely see it's paying off. And another big run last year we've got to mention is the World Cup. You and Gabriel Clemens get into the semi-finals. It was a new format last year, with it being just all pairs. What did you make of the new format last year, and I guess as well in the end being only 3 legs away from the final?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think Gabriel and me, we could have won that semi-final against Scotland. But it is what it is anyway. The format from the World Cup, I enjoyed it really much. I mean, I really have to say that I think it was 4 seeded nations, and these 4 seeded nations, they have a very big advantage, because they don't act in the tournament the first 2 days. And also, I really have to say that we are playing against good nations, maybe not so good nations, but you cannot underestimate anybody at all. And also in the group stages, it's difficult, you only play a best of 7 game, and only 2 games in a group, so you also need to be there right on time, which is, I think, difficult sometimes. It can be difficult sometimes. I mean, there have been some surprises at the last World Cup, and I think the format is a good idea, but I think there is still some things the PDC can maybe change to make it a little bit more equally to everybody, to give everybody a chance, even if they don't have their good 5 or 10 minutes, they still have a good chance to qualify for the KO round.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, let's get on to this year then, and I think a lot of darts fans would have had your name on their list of first-time title winners for 2024, along with Luke Littler, Gabriel Clemente had been on there as well. So going into this year, did you have any particular goals in mind? Was it looking to get that first titles that high on the list, or was there something else you had your eye on?
Honestly, I wasn't really looking on the title this year because I thought on 2023, this one is the year to catch a title. Well, I haven't, so I thought, well, then you just need to manage to get back to the World Match Play, to get back to the World Grand Prix, qualify for the European Championship Finals, Players Championship Finals. And and now with that title, I'm qualified for the Match Play and the World Grand Prix. It's a really strange thing. I was so many times thinking about the title, and now suddenly, when I was not really thinking about it in the first place, suddenly it happens. I cannot explain it, but it was just like that. And I'm really happy with that year now that I'm qualified for the match play. I'm going to try to win my first game there as well, and then we are going to see what's going to happen step by step. And also in the World Grand Prix, it would be a great thing to get back to the quarters there, maybe a semi-final this year on a major event, on a ranking major event. I want to pronounce it that way because, I mean, the World Cup is a great feeling to play, especially in Germany in front of the home crowd. But let's face it, a semi-final there is not really a meaningful thing. Of course, it's meaningful to play in your front crowd, but ranking-wise, it's not very meaningful. So it would be great to qualify for maybe a semi-final, maybe a final on the major as well. But yeah, like I said before, going to look every game I'm going to play step by step.
Well, you mentioned semi-finals. It was just a few weeks ago you made the semi-finals in Munich on the Euro Tour, and much like in Riesa, a lot of quality, consistent performances in the high 90s on the averages, and we saw how disappointed you were with how that semi-final went with Michael van Gerwen. Was that a sign that you felt like you were ready to make that next step and get to a final, win a title?
Yeah, that was a thing I've mentioned when I was talking to my wife, because I said I think it's a very good thing that I was so frustrated and disappointed that I lost in the semi-final against Michael, because it was already a good result, because I needed good results to qualify for the majors, because my ranking situation wasn't looking good for the match play and for the Grand Prix. But still, even though I made it to the semis, which was a good result thinking wise back then, I mean it's still a good result. I was like really frustrated when I lost that one, but I still thought to myself, it was a good thing that I was frustrated, because I'm here to win it, you know. So I was trying to get that feeling back, especially when I was playing against Chris in the semis. Of course, at one point you're starting to think about it. Maybe you're going to win it this time. And yeah, didn't win it in Munich. Next European I was playing, I won it there, so cannot complain at all. Cannot complain at all.
No, don't blame you. And you are the third German to win a PDC senior title, following in the footsteps of Max Hopp and Ricardo Pietrexco. And like you, they both won on the Euro Tour in front of a home crowd. How does it feel to hear your name being sung by the German fans when you're playing? That must be a pretty special feeling.
It is a very special feeling. I mean, when I look back on myself, on the way I come on the tour, on how I was performing sometimes up on stage, it really needed some time for me to get up there and to be myself, to be a little bit more emotional, to get the pressure away from myself just by celebrating good moments or good 180s or good finishes, something like that. And yeah, now I'm looking on a newer self compared to me like 5 years ago, and everything was a great progress. I mean, it's like, how to say, it's like the success of the fans are singing then your name in a specific way. Like everything you're working for is paying off, and also like when the results are coming, then yeah, like you mentioned before, it was just like so overwhelming. I think everybody was able to see it, and it's like a combined feeling, you know, between sometimes feeling the way that the fans are singing about you, and also like winning the tournament then.
Good times. Well, it was mentioned on the commentary and social media as well over the weekend that you worked as a steward on the Euro Tour 10 years ago. I know you've spoken about it before being a steward. I'm interested to know, though, how did that job come about in the first place, getting to be a steward on the Euro Tour?
I mean, I wanted to be on the tournaments. I also wanted to play the qualifications for the European Tour events, but I was still young. I was 17, so I was not even a grown up, and also I was in a situation that was not very good with my finances, because I was not going to work. I was still at school back then, so I was like talking with the PDC, and he one of the chefs of the PDC Europe, and he was saying like, it's no problem, you can play the qualification, you pay your entry, but we cover your hotel, but for that you have to work as a steward. So it was a good deal, like to say I was working for them, but I still got my opportunity to play, and still I got the opportunity to meet my idols like Michael van Gerwen or Raymond van Barneveld or Gary Anderson, so players who I've been a fan of before 10 years. So this was like a combined situation how I was ending up in the PDC, or as a steward, I mean.
And now here you are, playing against them and beating a lot of them as well.
I'm not a fan anymore.
Well, it's not long before you're going to be back on that stage again on the Euro Tour, just 2 days from now when we're talking in Sindelfingen. The draw's not out yet when we're talking, but we'd imagine you're going to be playing on that Friday evening session. So how much are you looking forward to that German homecoming on the walk-on?
I'm going to let it happen because of course I'm imagining a lot of things, and hearing my name called out loud and saying he's a European Tour winner, but I'm gonna be I don't know the English word for, I'm going to be very eager to that feeling. I want to know it, I want to learn it, I want to deal with it. So I mean, I can imagine now a lot, but I'm gonna see how it's going to be.
Got 2 questions from our listeners before we let you go, but last one from us. This title's put you back in that Pro Tour top 16. You mentioned about qualifying for the majors as well. You're well set to be in them for the rest of the year. How much is the focus now on using this title to take you on to bigger and better things and creating more history, not just for yourself but for German darts as well?
I mean, I'm gonna try my best to get the best results for myself in the first place, and if I'm gonna create history with it, then I'm gonna take it, obviously. But in the first place, my game is the most important thing for me. So I'm not gonna focus on where I can write some new history, because I think this would be the wrong way to think. So in the first place, it's definitely the way I'm gonna play. And second place, what I'm gonna be able to do with the title, how am I gonna react if I'm going to be in the semi-final of a major event? So I know the feeling now. Maybe I can use that experience from over there, and then the third place is probably making history.
Well, right, let's get to these 2 listener questions before we let you go. And the first one comes from Charlie Gray, who says, who got you into darts and what was your very first set of darts?
My very first set of darts was let's say there are 2 options to say it. The first one was some set of brass darts which came with the board. And the first one I really bought for myself has been Gary Anderson Phase number 1. So very, very old darts, a very long time ago. And how I got into darts was I was watching it on TV. We had a soft tip, like a soft tip board in our basement, but it was a very cheap one, so it was not very enjoyable to play on that one. It was very noisy. Probably my parents didn't really like it that much. And then we saw steel dart in the TV, the World Championships in 2006, 2007. It's probably one of the first I've ever seen. And this is how my parents started to buy a board. to buy a steel dart board, and since then I was playing like partly, and since the start of 2012 I was playing regularly in a club.
And the last one comes from FC Lucas, kind of like a what if question here. He says, how important was losing your tour card in hindsight? If you had kept it, would you still be as successful now, or was it a kind of warning?
I think he described it already perfectly in his question. I think it was the perfect warning for myself, because before I lost my tour card, I was sometimes very, very lazy, because I was having good results in the past. So I thought, maybe I'm not the guy like Gary Anderson is always saying, that I'm not practicing a lot. And I was thinking, maybe you are a player of that kind as well, so you don't need to put that much effort into it. But because I lost my tour card, then I realized, well, you're doing something wrong. You have to change something. And this was the perfect opportunity, especially with COVID happening. I took my chance because the tournaments have been cancelled. So I was able to practice more at home, because obviously everybody was spending a lot of time at home.
Well, Martin, always a pleasure to get you on the show. Really do appreciate you giving us some of your time. Congratulations on the big title at the weekend, and we wish you all the best for that homecoming this weekend and what else is to come in 2024 as well.
Thank you very much, Alex. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Thanks again to Martin for joining us. Now continuing our look back at the weekend and over to events in America, where we saw Alex Spellman book his return to Madison Square Garden, winning the Cross Border Challenge, a 9-darter in the tournament as well in the first round. Is he the next North American to get on the PDC Tour?
USA. Sorry, after how poor the USA did last year, I had to celebrate this one while I can. I have to think, assuming he needs to go to Q School, who knows, he's going to win the Grand Slam and the World Championships and not have to, but assuming he needs to go to Q School, and assuming he does go to Q School, I think the answer has to be he's the most likely, because he is the most likely. He played at a Pro Tour level across those 4 matches, 97, we'll say 92 because it was just a tick below, 94 and 91.5. That's not going to win every match in the PDC, but that's the level that PDC professionals need to play at. And he did it across 4 matches, and he did it in one of the biggest events on the calendar that he's going to have to play this year. And it's par for the course. I was a bit surprised that he didn't win a card, because he is consistent. He is an all-around good player, and he brings his A game more often than anyone else. We can talk about Stowe Bunce, who was brilliant in Wolverhampton last year, but he's not as consistent. He'll have great matches, but he'll drop off, and it showed in the semifinals where he averaged 82, and he didn't play anywhere near his best. Granted, he didn't need to in the first round against John Part, and that consistency is something that's not matched by the other players in North America who don't currently have a tour card, other than the ones who've had a tour card in the past. If Jeff Smith decides he wants to go back to Q School and give it another go, I think he's good enough. He is a top 64 player. He was a top 64 player until COVID hit, and I think it derailed his progress and derailed his career. It was very tough for him to get over during lockdown and play at his best starts. And he didn't as a result, and his game regressed. But if he can get his confidence back and decides to give it another go, I think Jeff Smith is a quality player, and he has the experience. I think there's some other players who, if they give it a go, like Leonard Gates, can as well. But I think Alex Spellman is the real deal. I think he is a very, very talented player, and I don't think we've seen the best from him. But I'm glad he's got his spot at Madison Square Garden. I've already qualified to be in the crowd there. I'm glad someone else is qualified, even if it's to be on the stage. And I think he has a very, very bright future in the PDC if he decides to give it a go.
Well, some breaking news there. Burton DeWitt is going to be at the US Darts Masters as well. For this one, I feel like I've cheated with my homework, because I've just spoke with Alex a few hours ago for this week's show, and Q School for Alex Spellman, not a guarantee he's going to be there in January. He's been there for the last 2 years. Last year went to the European one this time round, elected for the UK Q School. So he's had a taste of both of them now. And this year, as you say, came ever so close to getting that tour card and not even being a possible answer for this question. He went into that final day of the final stage with 1 point on the board and then was racking up the wins and the points. And in the end, he might have only been one win away from getting that tour card. And you're going to hear from Alex in 10 minutes or so's time. And he talks through where his mindset is right now. So I won't give too much away. But before chatting to him and having just watched him play at the weekend, he would have been my first name on my list, that's for sure. And we have seen what he can do over the last few years on the CDC circuit. Last year, he topped the points list, made that debut in the World Championships at Ali Pali, and fair to say he didn't look overawed by the experience. He took that first set against Ryan Joyce before losing 3-1, a 95 average. Before the draw, it was one of the toughest draws from that list of Pro Tour qualifiers because we'd just seen Ryan Joyce make the semi-finals in Minehead. But yeah, the chat that we had with Alex, he gives some really interesting insight as well into that Q School campaign this year, and also how he battled with his own throw. Q Action, I slipped up there, but how he's come back from that and picked up some form again and winning that title of the weekend. As you say, it's opened a few doors. It's got him in the US Darts Masters, that North American Championship as well. So already a chance there to try and get back to Ali Pali. But a tour card for him right now, it's not the be all and end all because, as we know, Alex, he is a full-time player. He's doing some coaching on the side, but playing wise, he's got the CDC, he's got other tournaments around America. If he does qualify for some of these events here in the UK, that's what's bringing him his income at the moment. And with Q School, you know, we've seen this year 2 Americans win their tour cards. Danny Lauby for the first time, Jules Van Dongen getting his tour card back. But I think with the rise of the CDC, we are seeing that strength in depth go up each year. Is the goal to get on the PDC tour right now, or is the main drive for some of these players at the moment to explore what's on offer closer to home in North America, improve your game, get it to a level where you feel ready to make that jump? Because we've got to say it's a huge decision, isn't it? All the travelling back and forth, or if you're taking your family over from America or Canada over to Europe or the UK. So it's not for everyone. You've really got to be 100% committed. And at the moment, there's a few names in there: Alex Spellman, Stowe Bunce, Leonard Gates, David Cameron, who almost pulled it back in that final at the weekend. You know, they're all capable of competing on the tour, but perhaps it's not something we're likely to see in the immediate future from those players.
Now, yet another stacked weekend of darts to enjoy coming up. The Euro Tour in Sindelfingen, Women's Series continues in Wigan. But what have you got your eye on from this weekend's lineup of events?
Well, I'm going to start off with the Women's Series. 4 more events in Wigan this weekend, and that first weekend of the season, it drew plenty of attention, didn't it? 3 different winners from the 4 events, and none of the players were named Beau Greaves, and you'd have got long odds on that if you'd have predicted that before a dart was thrown. And when we reviewed that first weekend of the Women's Series, we were discussing that race to be the number 1 seed for the Women's World Match Play this summer. Just £100 now separating Fallon Sherrock and Beau Greaves. Fallon, she won 2 of those 4 events last time out, beat Beau in the final both times, which helped her move £100 ahead. So I think there's only 2 weekends left now before that cut-off, and that's a really interesting subplot to follow, as is just the race to get to Blackpool, because we saw Noah Lynn van Leuven. She moved into those spots after winning her first title, and she's looking well set to be in the field again. Then you've got Aoife McCormack. She's just ahead of Natalie Gilbert on countback for that last spot. Natalie, we know, missed the last weekend. She was on holiday in Jamaica, but we expect her to be in these next 2 weekends of events and looking to make up for it. And then you've got a few other names in there as well. Katie Sheldon, Lorraine Hyde, just a few £100. So that race is getting quite interesting now for Blackpool. The race for Ali Pali, still early days. We've only just had 1 weekend for that, but Fallon Sherrock is leading the way. One to keep an eye on, but I think the main storyline is that Blackpool race, and I think what reaction we're going to see from Beau Greaves, because you'd expect her not to go another weekend without winning the title, and she'll want to come back with a vengeance and pick up a few titles this weekend. And as for the Euro Tour, I was just having a look. It's the second of 3 weekends in a row that we've got a Euro Tour, so you can't grumble at that, can you? All the usual suspects are going to be there, plus Luke Littler. He didn't qualify for the second and third Euro Tours in Munich and Riesa, but he did win through the tour card qualifiers for this one. So you're going to expect GB News and the Daily Mail to be more interested about darts this weekend. But I think, again, that the follow-up, how does Luke Littler follow up on his Euro Tour debut? He won that title in Belgium. can he repeat the feat in Sindelfingen? And Martin Schindler as well. What's his encore going to be after his Euro Tour title? Not as long to wait as Luke between Euro Tour appearances, just the 5 days after that win on Sunday night. But he's going to be in action again. You'd imagine he'll be on that Friday night session, and that's going to be quite the homecoming for him. And just lastly, speaking of encores, a word for Richie Edhouse as well, because I didn't think we could go through this show without mentioning him and the levels that he produced at the weekend, getting to the quarterfinals in Riesa, his first time in that final session on a Euro Tour since 2018, the 160 finish in the decider against Michael Smith, beating Rod Cross with a 103 average. So yeah, another name there. He's qualified for this event as well, I should mention, but I'm interested to see what he follows up with this weekend as well.
Well, if you hadn't mentioned him, I was still going to, because that's the main thing I'm looking forward to this weekend, is to see what Richie Edhouse can do for an encore. And I think he, I think he deserves a question of his own right now. So I'm turning this into a question of his own because that's what I have my eye on. If you look back a couple of years ago, I can't recall if it was 2021 or 2022. I think it was 2021 when we were preparing for the World Championships. I mentioned that he had a quietly good year. I don't think we had mentioned him the entire season. And when we were preparing for the World Championships, looking through his stats, right around, I think, 50th in averages up to that point in the year, and just consistent across the board. And we had not given him a look all year. We had not mentioned his name. And okay, he qualified for the European Championships that year, but there were only 2 Euro Tours. But it made me take notice of him. And I don't think he improved over the next couple of years, even regressed a bit. For much of last year, it looked like he wasn't going to qualify for the World Championships, but he got a good enough run together at one point that he got himself in. But if you look at the total of ton-plus averages in the Players' Championship events the last 3 years, the number of times he really played at his best. He was 7 in 2021, that quietly good year. It went down to 2 in 2022. It was 6 last year. Nothing that's all that earth-shattering. That's averaging once out of every 4, once out of every 5 events. Not matches, but events. He'll have one of those really top-class matches. Well, in 8 events so far this year, he's already done it 4 times. And then this past weekend on the Euro Tour, he did it twice more. You mentioned that ton average against Michael Smith with that 160 out. You mentioned that 103 against Rob Cross. And even though he regressed significantly in that match against Stephen Bunting in the quarterfinals, he hit it the right times. He kept going, even though you could tell he was frustrated that he wasn't getting the heights that he had gotten on Saturday or on Sunday afternoon. He kept fighting and he kept pushing and he kept pulling himself back into that match and lifting his average, showing a fighting quality that I don't think he showed before on the big stage. You look at those last 2 World Championships where he was 2 sets up and fell apart and lost those matches. It was the reverse this past weekend, where he was the one who was coming back no matter what it was at. And he's playing at a level that we've not seen before. And it's not like that this is the last chance for him. After, qualifying has always been difficult for him. He's never qualified for more than 5 Euro Tours in any given year. He's never qualified for more than 2 in a row. Well, you mentioned there's 3 consecutive weekends of Euro Tours. He's in all 3 of them. And then he's in the next one after that. So he's qualified for 4 consecutive in a year where they've cut back the number of qualifiers by half. There's only 10 qualifying spots. So it's much more difficult for qualifying. And he's winning them at a rate that he's never come close to winning them before. I want to see what comes next because he is not the player he's been for the last 5 years. He is a much, much, much tougher opponent. And he's now just 2,250 pounds behind Brendan Dolan for the last spot. Granted, in the World Match Play, granted, that's with qualification money for 3 of the events. Brendan Dolan doesn't have that money added in yet. He's qualified, but he has to win a match. Andrew Gilding, who's right there as well, has qualified through the Pro Tour Order merit, but he's going to have to win a match. And then that's a few thousand pounds that suddenly will jump up. Luke Woodhouse, Callan Ritz, also in this event with work to do. James Wade, still with work to do, needing to win a match for his ranking money to count. So Richie Edhouse has a lot more to do than just make up 2,000 pounds because those players have already those players haven't gotten their qualifying money on yet, but he's put himself in that race, and he's playing better than anyone that he's chasing. This is a different Richie Edhouse, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does for an encore, and I'm looking forward enough that I'm not even going to talk about anything else, because I think you covered anything else I would have talked about.
Well, that was our first ever Richie Edhouse appreciation minute. There could be some more coming the way he performed at the weekend, but let's bring in our final guest on this week's show. He is the newly crowned Cross Border Challenge champion. Here's our chat with Alex Spellman. I'm pleased to say we're joined by the newly crowned CDC Cross Border Challenge champion, Alex Spellman. Thanks for the time, Alex. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on again.
Great to get you back on, and there is only one place to start, and that is with the weekend just gone in Indiana where you won that Cross Border Challenge. A few days on, how do you reflect on your latest CDC title on the stage?
At the moment, it's mostly some relief. The last couple months haven't been. It's been really up and down. Not a lot of success on the singles side of things, and it's nice to not only have a victory on the CDC side, because that is the toughest challenge we have on this side of the pond, but it's also nice to have some success after having a stretch of little success.
Definitely, and winning the title special enough, but we've got to mention the 9-darter as well during your first match of the tournament on Friday night. What was that moment like?
Honestly, the moment was, obviously it's good for me, but it honestly, I enjoyed it more because it was, a stream CDC event. It's, opening weekend of our 2024 campaign. It's in front of a crowd. It was more fun to do that in that situation than like a floor event or something like that. The start of that match wasn't great statistically, but my darts were mostly landing where I wanted them. Just kind of had to wait for them to fall in, and once they started falling in, they just kind of never stopped.
Well, they certainly did that, and I remember when we last spoke to you, you said you've got a stoic approach to the game. You don't often show a lot of emotion, and you kept to that with your celebration for that 9-darter as well. There's a few high fives to the crowd, but for me, I loved that, keeping the arm extended out after the double 12 went in, a little bit like Darius Labanowski's Gerwyn Price do it sometimes. But was it hard not to let the emotions take over after that 9-darter?
I wish I could say yes, because I know that's the answer people want to hear. But for me, I've had a couple 9s. So I tell people, it's like people pressure themselves to hit that first 180, and once they hit it, then they start falling more regularly, because now it's not a thing anymore. So honestly, if I had done that on a floor event, I probably wouldn't have had hardly any celebration, because if just like if you can get too low on yourself, it can affect the next couple games. If you get too high on yourself and a big adrenaline rush, that could affect the rest. And it was a great moment, but I also knew it only counted for one leg, and I still had a job to do, and Sylvain was playing great. So I didn't let the emotion of the moment get to me, but because again we're playing in front of a crowd, I needed to at least give them something, So and we're right there, right up on the player or on the fans. So I thought it'd be cool to kind of give them some acknowledgement and appreciation.
No, it makes sense. And looking further ahead in the tournament, you were pushed all the way in the semi-finals and the final. Firstly, that semi-final with Jake McMillan, one moment that I wanted to bring up, which probably highlights that composure that you've got under pressure in the decider. You're on double 9, the first dart goes outside, you then switch, go single 10, double 4 to get over the line. A lot of players, they might have been stubborn, kept going for that double 9, but you decided to switch it up.
Right. I knew Jake had been playing great, and even watching him play his other matches, he may not have been necessarily the best player on the board statistically, but he was the better player when it came to timing, and a lot of the times that's what you need. And knowing that, and even though I felt comfortable with the double 9, I'm actually pretty successful on it. It was a situation where you don't want to miss inside and take a third dart out of your hand. So my plan was going in is, if I nail it first dart, cool. If I miss inside, I can clean up. But if I miss on the outside, I'm gonna take a different approach and just kind of. It's odd lately. if I don't hit it the first dart, it seems like it's taken me 3-4 darts to actually close it out. And the combination finishing has been pretty good. So my game plan was, if I hit it, cool. If I miss inside, it's a combo finish. I feel comfortable with that. And if I miss outside, I need to, like you said, not be stubborn. I'm overly confident in everything I do, but you don't want to let that take away from what you should be doing. And in that situation, it felt best to move to an open bed, and fortunately I hit it.
Yeah, it paid off. You're through to the final with David Cameron, 3 legs on the spin. You go 6-3 up on the brink of winning the title. David comes back, he wins the next 3, and you had a couple of chances during those legs. What was going through your head as you started that deciding leg?
So, just last weekend, it was a 2 out of 3, so, short format, but I missed 11 match darts to beat him 2-0, and he ends up beating me in the third leg after I missed a dart at the bull, and he hit his third dart on the bull. So when I got up 6-3, I just kind of had in my head, don't ease up, don't get too comfortable like we did just last week against him. And from that moment forward, I don't know if that kind of put me in like a hyper-focused kind of mood, because I genuinely barely remember the last couple legs. I tried to clear the mind and just focus on hitting my targets, and unfortunately, I missed 2 match darts. He hits a massive 106. I do remember those 2 darts at the double. But the rest of the legs, I don't know. As someone that doesn't drink or do anything like that, that very easily could have been a situation where I kind of let it get to me. But I think playing him last week, and I generally have some pretty good success against Cameron. It kind of allowed me to go the opposite direction, which was comfortability. I have throw, as long as I throw solid, I don't have to hit 1080s here. I mean, obviously, if I do, it puts pressure on him. But for some reason, I was able to stay focused, stay calm, and finish the job.
Yeah, we saw that in the decider, kicking off with that brilliant 177. You almost take out the 143 to get it done, but you get over the line on 88. The title also secures you that return to the US Masters, the North American Championship as well. How excited are you to be heading back to Madison Square Garden?
Really excited. Last year that was my first big stage event. We did have a cross border, before that, but you don't really know what to expect at a large event until you're there. I played pretty comfortably on that stage because I guess I didn't have a lot of expectations. I don't know what to expect this time because I do have a lot of expectations. I've played some of those guys now. I know what to expect from them. Some of them might know what to expect from me because like I said, I've played a handful of them. So, I mean, it could go any way, but I'm really excited if I bring, my AA plus game. I think, maybe I'll be fortunate enough to go on a little bit of a run like Jeff Smith did.
We shall see. Well, we were just chatting off there. We last had you on the show. It was just before you made that debut in the World Series in the US Masters last year, and you said to us you'd probably feel more nerves when you walked into the arena. What was that experience like playing at Madison Square Garden and in that arena last year?
It was great. I don't know. I think what helped me stay comfortable was, I guess the nerves, anxiety, whatever you want to call it, when you're walking in, is just because of the unknown. You don't really know what to expect, but that went away kind of quickly because I realized, most of the people in the crowd, they're people I've played in front of many, many, many times before. So, it didn't really feel that much different. It's just louder, more of them all at once. But I feel like it's a little harder to play in front of a crowd that you don't know. I was able to kind of to jump to other things. Worlds was a little easier to play in front of because of Modus. In Modus, it's a much smaller, more intimate crowd. That was probably the most stressful, live event I've played in on the Saturday night, just because it is a smaller crowd. I don't know anybody there. You want to kind of, I don't want to say show off, but you want to produce some good stuff for them. And fortunately, those experiences at Modus made it to where I could play pretty comfortably at Worlds. But yeah, it all started with MSG last year, getting that familiarity, and fortunately, it helped me in future events.
Well, let's get on to that World Championship debut last year, because you got there via the CDC points list, 3 titles, 2 finals in the season to get that debut at the World Championship. You were in a good position on that ranking list for quite a while last year, but when your place is confirmed, what did that mean to you?
It's fortunately, because it kind of was a gradual building thing. It never really hit me like, oh my God, I'm in the Worlds. I was playing well enough throughout the entirety of the season that not that it was obviously a for sure thing, but I kind of had been preparing myself to get that spot for a couple months, just like I said, based on my placement, how I was playing at the time. So it was more just, and I think I said at the time when they asked me how do you feel, and I said, obviously I'm excited, but I'm not gonna get too excited, because you don't want to put the event up on a pedestal, because that's when the anxiety and expectations start piling up. I'm just going to treat it like any other event, and if I play well, then hopefully I win, and if I don't play well, that sucks. But that's how I try to approach everything. It's if you put the event and what's on the line up on a pedestal, it just makes it that much harder to actually play your best.
Well, you certainly did play well, and the result didn't go your way against Ryan Joyce, but you did perform well for a debutant especially as well. 95 average, you won that first set 3-0 before Ryan, who just made a semi-final on TV, coming back, and he'd average a ton himself. How did you reflect on that game after the dust had settled?
I'm perfectly happy with it. Obviously, no one wants to lose, but maybe I'm the weirdo in the dart world, but I said this to John Part in the first year or two of the CDC. He's not going to remember this, and I think I actually mentioned this on the show the last time. But I told him I would always much rather play well and lose than win playing poorly, because I like playing darts because I like playing well. I don't know. John told me, if I keep that mindset, I won't ever amount to anything, and he didn't mean it in a negative way, but I'm honestly still in that mindset. If I play well, I'm giving myself chances to win, and so that's my main focus. I did just that. I played well. It allowed me to get out to a 3-0 lead in that first set. He goes up 2-0 in the second. I battle back to make it 2-2. I do feel like after that first break, that first set, if I hit that 128 to break in the opening leg of the second set, I feel like that gives me a confidence boost. I don't know how, obviously Joyce is a professional, so I don't know how it'll affect him, but I feel like the match maybe goes a little more in my favor if I can hit that big break right after that first set. But it took a monstrous back end performance from Joyce, to steal that match. Well, I say steal it. He beat me 3-1, but it felt closer to than that. I can live with that every day. Obviously, I want to win, but if that's how I'm losing, like I said, I can live with that.
Well, we'll give a plug to your YouTube channel as well, because I watched your video after the Worlds, an interesting breakdown. I look back from a player's perspective, so do go and check out for our listeners if you haven't already. But what's the interest been like in your videos so far, and I guess where did that idea come from in the first place?
So I used to put a lot of detailed Facebook posts, all text based, just kind of explaining how my weekends went, good and bad. I felt like a lot of players, they'll just, put out something that's like, thanks to my sponsors, I had a good weekend, and that's it. But what made it a good weekend? Maybe you didn't perform, and those posts were more like, I didn't have a great weekend thanks to my sponsors. What would not be a great experience? I feel like players that are up and coming and they're trying to get to where I'm at, they want to know these things, and I do feel like a lot of players focus on what they did well and not really talk publicly about when they're not playing well and why they're not playing well. And I wanted to provide that perspective, because I know a lot of players think that guys like me, or even the big boys like MVG and Michael Smith, that the second they pick up the darts for the day, that they're hitting 10 80s and 9 darters. And I assure them that we're all terrible when we first pick up the darts for the day. It takes some time to get in a good rhythm and good mood. They're showing up a couple hours before an event, and I just want other players to see what the process is like. And I didn't think people were actually reading it. If anything, it was almost like, Facebook Memories allows you to go back and look at things you've talked about. So it allows me to kind of look back on tournaments. It's like, instead of me just being like, oh, I know I played well at the tournament last year, but I don't remember much. Well, now I can go back and read about it, kind of reminisce a little bit. I can see if I keep having the same issues, whatever. Maybe I couldn't hit doubles a year, and guess what? I still can't hit doubles now. So maybe that's something I should work on or something. I don't know. It just provides some perspective. It's almost like a journal of sorts to track your progress over time. And people somehow seem to really like it. And it seemed like the more detailed I was, the more they were into it. And it got to the point where it was taking me so long to type these things out, it just got easier to make a video about it now. So I started making videos, and depending on if it's a smaller event, maybe less interest. But if it's a bigger event, people want to hear about it, whether it's Worlds or Modus or Cross Border. I'm going to do a video on that. People seem to enjoy it, so as long as they enjoy it, I'm just going to keep it.
Glad to hear it. Yeah, keep them coming. And after the Worlds, it was a second crack at Q School where you came close to winning that card on the final day. You had the 97, 99 averages back to back during that last day. You looked to be on a roll before losing out 6-4 to Matthew Denon in the last 8, finishing just a point short. I guess, what was that final day like from the start, being on 1 point and then the wins keep on coming and the targets getting closer and closer?
Yeah, between Worlds and I tell people that second day of the first phase, I felt like one of the best players in the world. Like, everything was kind of falling my way. Those first 2 days at Q School, I think the majority of my matches were over ton averages and just feeling great. 2 days later, I don't know, my throw felt different. I know people think I'm more of an aimer because I'm slower, but I am methodical, but I have a slow, rhythmic throw. And something just changed. All of a sudden, my brain just wanted to throw fast. If I tried to slow down, it was very jerky, almost like a dartitis kind of thing. But if I just kind of relaxed and let my arm do what it wanted to do, it was a late release and a fast throw. So looking at those matches, the first 3 days, like you said, only on a point, I dropped from averaging over a ton to averaging low 80s, mid 70s. I couldn't let go of the dart, and when I wanted to, at least. There was a clip on Modus that kind of exemplified that. I could feel my arm about to go really fast, and I stopped myself halfway through the throw so I could kind of reset. And, there were comments on there saying that it looked like dartitis. It's not. It is. I was in a little bit of a mental battle with my throw, but, and that's part of why I'm relieved that I was able to pull out the victory this last weekend. It's, when you're having issues with that throw, there's really only 3 ways you can take it. It's either one, you kind of brute force it back to what you're supposed to be doing. You either accept, what the new throw is and try to work through it, or do what I did, which was I tried to create a hybrid. So my throw's a little bit different now than it was even at the time, but obviously it's coming together nicely. It was tough where I was staying in Milton Keynes to actually get some practice in, and really the only time I was able to work on my throw was in the mornings before the matches, and that's not the best time to be trying to correct an issue in your throw. And so after the first 3 days, and it just wasn't coming together now. And I've told people, I was there to win my card, but I think I would prefer not to have my card as an American-based player based in America. But of course, if I won my card, I would have accepted it, because why not? But more importantly, like I said, I like to play well, and that was what was eating at me the most. So I made the most makeshift board setup ever, and just worked on my mechanics, and it showed that fourth day that I was able to kind of find a little bit of a groove. It was Tony O'Shea. That was a good one. And then for some reason I'm blanking on the name right now. But the 99 right after that. So I was actually pretty confident going in against Dennett, and I just that inconsistency and that throw issue kind of creep back in, and I honestly had that match won. I had the momentum. He wasn't playing well, and it just kind of unfortunately fell apart there at the end, and then it carried over into Challenge Tour and carried over into Modus, and it was not the best trip I've ever had to England, for sure.
Well, just a couple more before we let you go, and I guess looking ahead, you kind of touched on it there in your last answer there. I saw a clip of your interview with US Darts recently where you said you were unsure about your plans for the future in relation to Q School there. there might be more opportunities to play closer to home, forge a career that way. So where do you stand right now? Is Q School off the table for next year, or is it too early to say?
It's not off the table. I mean, it is too early to say, but it's not off the table. I like competition, and I do like coming over there to play. It's just, do I want to make that my career choice at the moment is what I'm not sure of. That month away from home, I mean, maybe I feel different if I played well, but I don't really think so. It's even if I played well, it's still a month away, from home and my spouse, and it's tough. And you can kind of see it in some of the players. Jeff Smith has decided he's going to take a break and stay over here. Matt Campbell, his performances have been dropping a little bit. I mean, I haven't talked about but it is. I imagine that time away from home, the back and forth. He went home between his matches at Worlds. It lays on us. You pretty much have to do what Lobby's doing, which is be over there full time. Like, I expect Lobby to do really well for himself because he's doing what you have to do to be as successful as you possibly can. But that feeling of being away from home, plus I had a sound clip that some people disagreed with because I think they weren't understanding what I was actually saying. When I said that we have players that can compete and win over there, I'm not talking about winning world titles and things like that. I just mean that we can earn our wins now. If Jules or myself or somebody goes and plays any given player on the Pro Tour, I don't think it's a shock. Like, it's not a surprise that we won those matches. They don't have to play down to us anymore. We can actually, like I said, go earn our wins now. And I have 12 to 16 players I can rattle off now that are capable of doing that. And because of that, I'm not sure if we keep sending all our best players over to Europe, it makes it hard to build the game here. And, I know some countries have great players, but they don't have the depth that we have right now. And with the gambling being opened up for the first time this last weekend, we're growing the sport in other ways as well. And maybe now's the opportunity to see what we can grow here before I, bite the bullet and come over there and maybe full time and see what happens.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing that strength in depth growing in North America in recent years. And before we let you go, let's just look ahead then. The CDC Tour gets underway soon. The US Masters not far away, but looking at the rest of 2024, what is the plan for you darts wise? Is the focus going to be on those CDC events to get back to Ali Pali, or are there any other goals that you've got in mind for this year?
The base level goals are do well on the CDC and then get that World Championship spot again. But I don't try to set too many expectations. It's I know setting goals is good for a lot of people, but for me, it almost puts too much pressure on achieving them. So I just kind of go into each leg, try to play the best I can, and let things just fall into place naturally. And so far, that's been working really well for me. In between the CDC stuff, I play. This is my job now, so I'll be going to Dallas, Texas this weekend for a smaller tournament, but still getting reps in and trying to make some money so that I can continue to have this be my job. But I do coaching on the side as well to help improve our players here, but also it's income when I'm not playing. And yeah, so I'm immersing myself in the dart world now. In 2 weeks, we're going to a pop culture convention, so it's not even darts or sports related at all. It's just, it's popular over there to dress up in costume and go have a great time at the tournaments. Well, at these comic cons and other things, people like to dress up in costume play, and there seems to be maybe a good crossover there. If people like dressing up for costumes for these things, maybe they like to dress up in costume and come to our things. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm just, like I said, I'm going to let it all fall into place naturally, but I'm excited to see where it goes.
Well, it sounds like it's a busy rest of the year ahead, Alex. It's always great to get you on the show. Congratulations on that Cross Border Challenge title at the weekend, and wish you all the best for New York and what else is to come in 2024 as well.
Yep, thank you very much.
Thanks again to Alex for joining us, and we'll finish up the show with the mailbag. We've got 3 questions to answer this week. The first one comes from Antonin, who says, who will be the first German to win a major title?
I think the obvious answer right now has to be Martin Schindler. It doesn't mean he will be, there's been other German players. I mean, you go back a couple years ago, you would have thought it would have been the German giant, Gerwyn Price. He's regressed quite a bit over the last year, but he can find his game again. And there's other players on the up. Obviously, there's Ricardo Pietreczko, who actually beat Schindler to the punch in winning one of these when he won that one out of nowhere at the end of last year. And there's other players, Daniel Klose, who's a very good player. And there's also, assuming he's getting back to his best after what was a poor year last year, but came on strong to qualify for the World Championships through the PDPA qualifier, Florian Hempel. But I don't think either of those appear anywhere near being a major champion at this time. And even Ricardo Pietreczko, it was a great match against Gerwyn Price. There's nothing he can do, but he played fantastically. So maybe he is getting back after a slow start to the year. But it doesn't seem like he's right there yet at that level to win a major. But Martin Schindler, if he plays like he did the last two Euro Tours, is there. The consistency's been that one thing that's missing. He hasn't hit his top stride enough in back-to-back matches, but he has those last two Euro Tours. So I think you have to say Schindler, because right now he's the only one who really looks like he could go into an event and win it, regardless who he plays and regardless what gets thrown at him.
Yes, a great question. And I think there's a lot of people that are going to be on the Schindler train now after the weekend. And, there is 3 German players in that top 32 right now. And how long before one of them makes the top 16? You've got Martin Schindler, Gabriel Clemens, Ricardo Pietreczko. 2 of them now have won Euro Tour titles. The other one, not won a PDC title yet, but what's he done? Oh, he's made the semi-finals of the World Championship. So they've all had their moments over the last 12 to 18 months. And just looking at the stats as well, probably a bit longer than I should do, but the averages for all 3 of them over the last 12 months, not a lot between them either. You've got Martin Schindler 94.95, Gabriel Clemens 93.78, and Ricardo Pietreczko 93.27. So if we're playing the percentages like Ross Smith did at the weekend, Schindler and Pietreczko at the moment, you touched on it earlier with Schindler, they are going to be in more of the major events. They're in the provisional spots for the match play, the Grand Prix. Martin Schindler, this Euro Tour title should get him to that Grand Slam as well. Gabriel Clemens, he's got work to do to get to some of those events. So I might be cheeky on this one. And that I class the World Cup as a major because of the GOAT, Coast Dompe, winning the first one. So I'm going to say we're going to see 2 Germans make history at the same time. And Schindler and Clemens, they are going to win the World Cup. Too soon for a prediction for this year. So I'm not going to say it's going to be in 2024, but I think they are going to win it and become the first German major champions.
But then you have to add which of them is going to put their hands on the trophy on the Coast Dompe trophy first.
All right, we'll go with Gabriel Clemens because he's the bigger of the 2.
Next question comes from Nathan Barrington. Late question, but do you agree with PDC just picking Premier League players for World Series events? Should there be a few different players for those that are near the Premier League, such as Chizzy or Hedda?
Yeah, it's a fair question, and we've seen it so far in the 2 World Series events at the start of this year. Then we've got the upcoming ones in America and Poland. It is that Premier League 8 players that are getting picked for it. And the only slight difference with the Nordic Darts Masters in Denmark is we have got Dimitri van der Berg, the UK Open champion. He's going to be in instead of Luke Littler. But the PDC press release, when the lineup got announced, they did mention that Luke's got a prior engagement, I think a family event for that weekend, so he can't make that one. So if he hadn't had that, then you'd imagine Luke Littler would be in that event as well. So yeah, it's been the 8 players from the Premier League. I can see both sides of this. From the promoter's side, be that in America or Poland or Bahrain, they're going to want the top stars at their event. They want that full house. They only get one of these events a year. And the most likely way to get bums on seats is to get those star names. And a lot of the darts fans that are getting into the game, they'll be watching the Premier League. They'll see these 8 players. They'll see an event close to home and think, oh, they're all going to be there. Let's go and see them in person. So I do see that side. And we've heard it before when Fallon Sherrick, she won her 2 games at Ali Pali, the PDC. They were getting calls from the organisers of these World Series events saying, is Fallon going to come to our event? So they do want the players that are the biggest draws in the game right now. And more often than not, it is those players that are going to be in the Premier League. So I can see that perspective of it. But again, I do see the other side from a regular viewer's perspective. If you're watching darts all year, you've seen the Premier League for 4 months, week after week, you're seeing those 8 players, and you get these other events. You want to see a bit of variety, and we have seen it in the past. Okay, you have to go back a little while, but I remember 2018, I think it was Jamie Lewis got a call up to one of them after his run to the semi-finals of the World Championships. So, and we probably are going to see a few changes for the Australia-New Zealand doubleheader, just because some players might elect to skip it, take a break during the summer. So I can see maybe 1 or 2 of those established names not making that trip this year. But aside from that, players opting out, maybe being double booked, there's not been too much difference. So yeah, I can see both sides. For me, I'd like to see more variety, but at the same time, I can understand why they are picking those 8 players, the biggest names in the game right now, to be in it.
Yeah, and I think this year, more than other years, it makes sense to have the 8 Premier League players, because darts had an unprecedented publicity at the World Championships this past year, even more so, I think, than with Fallon Sherrick, because the Fallon Sherrick thing was a one-off, while the Luke Littler thing, the fact that it started making the news earlier on in the tournament and continued all the way through the final. So you suddenly had people in places in the world that don't normally watch darts paying attention to what's going on with the World Championship final. Brought an attention that they've never had before, and an opportunity they've never had before. And I've met multiple people in the past few months who have taken up darts in the U.S., whether it's playing or watching, or both. A lot of people both, in a way I've never seen before out of the World Championships. And people following the Premier League and betting on the Premier League here, who 6 months ago didn't know professional darts was a thing. So to have those 8 players that these people are watching week in, week out, the first time they're watching, to then have that opportunity to go see them makes sense. And I think this year it makes sense because of the unique growth that the sport is experiencing of new fans. But I do agree in general. I would rather there be some variety and some mixing into it because I think it's good for the game to showcase that it's not just the top 8. And I think it's good for the game to give players something to play for at the UK Open and the other events early in the year to get them into the World Series events later in the year, like Dimitri Van den Berg did for the Nordic Darts Masters this year. But this year, and only this year, I think having the 8 Premier League players is the correct call, because the World Series is about growing the game, and with the new fans that are coming in, bringing those 8 players to them is the right call.
And our final question from the mailbag this week comes from friend of the show, Cam Crabtree. Thoughts on this weekend's British internationals and Owen Bates being the width of a wire from knocking out the Asp? Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I didn't even know the British internationals were this past weekend, although we talked off air. So I'll let you comment on that part about it. But I'll mention for Owen Bates. I mean, we've only just started to see him now play on the Pro Tour, and now making that Euro Tour debut and pushing a reigning major champion to the wire shows the fight that he has in him. I think he's a player with a bright future, and I don't think that's the best or last we're going to see of him. He has 2 years to progress on the Pro Tour, and if he keeps playing like that, I think he will progress, and I think there is a lot more to come from him, and we won't ever remember that he came within a width of a wire from beating Nathan Aspinall, because before we know it, he will have beaten him and other players like him.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Cam. I've got to be honest as well and say the British internationals wasn't on my radar too much at the weekend. I knew it was on, but I caught up with some of the results today, and we don't have to wait for the Euros in the summer to say it's coming home, because England have brought it home at the weekend. A clean sweep, the men's, the ladies, the girls and the boys all winning the titles against Wales and Scotland. So congratulations to all of our players representing your country. Still a special achievement. And I know when we spoke with Cam, I think it was after he won the trial to get in the England squad. It was I think it was sometime last year. At the time, it was great to get into the England team, but he probably wasn't sure if he would get to put on that shirt, because by the time we got round to this event, he might have had a tour card. But I guess that is the plus side of not getting that tour card at Q School or via the Challenge Tour or Development Tour, is that he did get to play for England at the weekend, and it's something that he'll always remember. And as for Owen Bates, we gave it the big build last week. We mentioned it was going to be his Euro Tour debut. Could he master the Euro Tour? It was a tough draw out the gate playing Nathan Aspinall, but took him all the way, mastered the 170 finish in that game and just come up short, missing those match starts. But a new experience for him playing on the Euro Tour. We did see him at the World Championship. It is all experiences that for a young player they can learn from, and hopefully he'll get through a few more of those qualifiers and he'll be back on that stage again soon and picking up his first win on the Euro Tour.
Now, anything else for this week?
Well, I've got to say a few thank yous. Thank you to our guests, to Alex and Martin, for joining us. Thank you to our sponsors, as always, to Darts Corner and Condor Darts, for their continued support. Go and check them out. Links in the description. Thank you to everyone for listening as well. Really do appreciate you guys listening in each week. And just remembered, actually, we put a tweet out on Sunday morning saying if you wanted a shout out on our podcast this week, let us know who are going to be the two finalists and the winner on the Euro Tour at the weekend. And just scrolling through some of the answers that we got from our listeners, and it's not looking too good. No one predicted Martin Schindler to win the title. A few of them did predict Martin Schindler to make the final, and you know what? I'm feeling generous, so I'm going to give a shout out to the listener that got the closest with the prediction, and that is Jack WX01 on Twitter. He said Price wins against Schindler, so he got the two finalists, but the winner, he got it the other way around. So Jack, well done on almost getting it right. We are going to give you the shout out. And for all of our other listeners, good luck next time. But until next time, enjoy the darts.
Don't set a bad precedent. Now everyone who gets it wrong is going to expect in the future. But I kid. That's a very worthwhile shout out. A great foresight by Jack. But we'll be back next week to recap yet another Euro Tour Women's Series and anything else we might have missed. Any more British internationals that we'll have to talk about, we'll find out. So enjoy the darts, because there's a lot of that to enjoy, and hang tight to find out what surprise thing we'll talk about next week.